Hey there, Form Junkies, we're back. As many of you know, I'm your host, Huck, and joining us as usual, Darksend. How you doing, Darksend?
It is so good to be back. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Definitely is good to be back. We've been gone for quite some time due to Spear just getting a nice new job, and just all around, I think we all had some, holiday plans, and I think everybody here at Form Junkies hopes you guys had a great holiday, and we're back now. So this should be a weekly show coming back. We'll usually record on the weekends, early week, and it should be out hopefully on Wednesdays. So that's the plan right now. Anyways, Darksend, before we delve in, what are you up to here late?
I had been doing Let's Plays of Skyrim, but they kind of screwed me over with that, and my game doesn't work anymore. But I will be back doing those at the end of this month with Final Fantasy 13-2, and then I will also be doing them for a new IP coming out called Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, which is coming out on February 7th, so I will be getting back into that shortly. It's just that Skyrim, I was having a lot of troubles with it, and the interface, it was just more trouble than it was worth, but I was having so much fun doing those, so I will be getting back into them by the end of this month.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm very sad to hear that your what was it your software or something basically took an arrow in the knee. I don't know, something happened, but either way, it's
One of
good to
these
hear.
days I'm going to figure out that reference.
Yeah. One of these days you'll get to play and actually figure it out. Hopefully a guard doesn't take your sweet roll beforehand. Anyways, moving right along. I feel stupid for even making that joke. Our first topic today is from the other one on TangSpot now. He had said that this is a wall of text, so I'm basically just breaking it down a little bit. Basically, the overall is Kata in retrospect. And he says, I would not like to call Kata a failure, but I think it has a gross misreading of the player base and what people wanted from their MMO. Kata started off with heroics that ramped up in difficulty from normals by too large a factor for the player base. A lot of this, I believe, had to do with what Blizzard did to healers. I remember chamois healers being a joke when we first started running heroics. No one wanted a chamois healer. They sucked in general. The rest of the healers were okay, but a triage became the word of the day. And tanks, many had dropped tanking since every wipe was the tank's fault. I know personally my son walked away and is now back from the DS heroics. So I think he's pointing out something that a lot of people just attribute to the entire fact that Kata has not been the best expansion on the books for them. Basically is what most people contribute to it as the very beginning, where it started off and you thought you were doing well, but they tried to backwards in this whole vanilla feeling where it was just hard to get into raiding. I think that really works well with the new MMO coming out where it's like hard to get to like the end game because that's all there is. But the problem is you have 85 levels to go through, and then once you get to 85, you got to run all these dungeons, which takes arguably as much, if not more, time just to get to end game. Which I'll even say that a lot of the problems with Kata has been that the PvE raid content has been so subjective and has been really received negatively. So once they do all of this, level, gear up, they get into these raids, and it's just not worth it anymore. We're waiting this out, Darksend.
Now go throw a watermelon at them.
um, where was I, anyways?
I have no idea.
Anyways, Darks, you think is the contributing factor as to why Kata was received so negatively?
See, okay, when you say Kata heroics were hard, they weren't hard. It was
Oh my god.
Kata heroics aren't hard. They're harder than the previous expansion because that was the problem, making heroics last expansion so much easier. When Magister's Terrace first came out and Sunwell Island first came out, did anyone complain about the difficulty of heroic Magister's Terrace? I had 370s at the time. I had my warrior, my druid, and my warlock. My warlock had full frozen shadow weave, spell strike, hood, pants, belt of blasting, and Kara gear. Had never done anything harder than Karazhan. We went in there, with our Karazhan group, which was all alts, and absolutely steamrolled that place in Karazhan gear. And that was considered one of the hardest heroics. Sure, you needed to coordinate CC and have a decent group and, a tank who knew what they were doing, but it wasn't hard. It was it's just that the next expansion people didn't want to coordinate anymore. And it didn't even start out that way. At the beginning, things were harder and then got easier towards the end. People are looking at Kata Heroics and saying they're hard as a matter of comparison. Well, this was easy, so this is the new standard. Why was the easiest point in WoW 5-mans the comparison for difficulty that everything is being judged against? You should find some middle ground and say, okay, last expansion was easier than the middle ground, and this expansion is slightly harder than the middle ground.
How much, by maybe a numerical value or just the overall feeling, how much easier was Wrath of Lich King compared to Kata for you? And do you think a lot of these people who are crying foul about Kata are basically just, I hate to use the term, wrath babies, in the sense they were spoiled with that?
I got keyed to SSC and TK pre-5-man nerf, which meant 45-minute Shattered Halls and Arcatraz pre-nerf. So, I mean, we had a lot of it's... The problem is people don't want to talk in looking for raid, so you can't have that coordination that was needed. You really don't need to talk
in looking for raid. It's so Velcro mode. It's so easy.
Or
There's no need to talk.
Okay. People don't want to talk in looking for group 5-mans. And that coordination factor, Blizzard wanted to make all 5-mans so that whatever set of people was thrown in together, you couldn't not finish the dungeon because, say, this pack needed a sap, a sheep, and a banish. And if you didn't have those classes, you couldn't finish the instance. So coordination was taken out of the game. So I think Blizzard wanted to make it harder on purpose to make up for the lack of needed coordination.
But do you think that strong-handing from Blizzard's side more or less caused this huge backlash against them? Whereas in Wrath, they basically said, okay, we get it. We don't think you should fail because this person maybe not doing the correct thing, standing in fire or whatever. And then once Kata rolled around, they said, well, these people say they want it harder, so why don't we make them coordinate? But you've taken 10 million players who run this and basically say, don't worry about coordination, just face roll DPS. And then you go into a new expansion and say, okay, you have to work together. People naturally, especially in games, don't want to have, they just want everybody to know what they're doing, and if they don't get what they want, they immediately assume everyone else is stupid or whatever. So is it the player's fault or is it Blizzard's fault?
I would say it's a player's fault because Blizzard, I don't like raid nerfs. What they did in Firelands was just absolutely preposterous. And then, I don't like raid nerfs. What they did in Blackwing Descent was just preposterous. And then again in Sunwell, absurd numbers-wise, like absolutely absurd. For 5-mans, on the other hand, I had done every single heroic 5-man before Cataclysm had been out for 24 hours. I hit level 85 within 16 hours, went straight into the heroics, did every single one in leveling gear and level 80 raid gear. Within 2 weeks, every single heroic had been nerfed, which I think is an appropriate amount of time. If you're complaining about difficulty, then in that first 2 weeks, either you're someone who goes by themselves and just wanted to rush after 85. When you hit 85, if you hit 85 before those nerfs and you don't have a solid group to be running with, then chances are you're not doing hard modes anyway. So you don't really need to be running those for gear all the time. And I think the amount of time, I will say Dead Mines was way too hard. Not too hard, but just way too long. It seemed like anytime you got Dead Mines, it was better to just take Deserter and go back 15 minutes later. So that was one that needed to be nerfed, and it was addressed rather quickly. That was probably the first one to get nerfed, and it needed it, and afterwards it was probably the easiest heroic. So Blizzard did a very good job with the timing as far as 5-mans on what and when to nerf things. So I think putting up with very, very hard stuff for 2 to 3 weeks because you rushed to 85, you know, maybe it's because let the people who want that challenge be challenged for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you guys can have your fun for the next year.
So my ending question to you, Dark. So the question is, in MOP, what kind of setup should they have? Should they have the Kata setup with 5 mans, or should they have the Wrath setup with 5 mans? And I'm going to say, with all the content they're trying to introduce into the game outside of just raiding, that they should make 5 mans, heroics even, the Wrath model, where they are very simple. Because what I think happened was their reasoning behind making them so hard, other than people wanted it and such as that, was that they wanted them to have a time sink. But with MOP, they're implementing so many new features that there doesn't need to be that time sink just from dungeons, because they won't be able to do any of this new stuff. So I'm saying, personally, in my opinion, that the MOP 5-man dungeons should be the Wrath model, where they kind of are face roll easy, and you really don't have to ever worry about coordinating. What do you think?
I think it should be both. I think one thing that Blizzard didn't do a good job of was they used to be very good at it, and they just completely went away from it recently, is dungeon tiers. And what I mean by that is the original, or the Blackwing Descent eye level for normals was 359. There should have been a 352 epic tier that, let's take 5 dungeons. We'll do Throne of the Tides heroic would be helms, and then Grim Batol would be legs, and then you get the idea. The next one would be shoulders, and then chest, and then gloves, and then the last one would be weapons. And the normal dungeon is stupid face roll easy, but at the very same time, it's very easy to wipe. So with Star Wars, they have things called bonus objectives, and you get these during normal quests while leveling too. But what they do is they'll spawn an extra boss. So in the first one, the first one while you're leveling, you get to it's pretty simple. Stage 1 is kill 15 people in Section 1. The next one is kill 15 people in Section 2. And then the third one is hack these 4 terminals, and it opens a door. And when you open that door, there's a boss behind it. Whereas, you know, if you don't do that, you could easily miss that boss. As you get higher and higher up, those bonuses become harder to achieve and unlock. So give a bonus tier for people who can push themselves and make those harder things within the framework of an easy dungeon, if that makes any sense. Because Shattered Halls originally wasn't that hard. You could take your time, see stuff. You know, it wasn't a problem. It was only a matter of...
Oh, that's such a dirty word, CC. Oh,
it was only...
Everybody's crying right now. Dude, just calm down. Whoa. I'm sorry, continue.
But it was only a matter of being difficult when you had to pull everything at once, and your tank had to have 8 things on them in order to beat the timer, and you had to AoE them all down to beat the timer. So it was really how, you know, how your group proceeds through a dungeon makes a world of difference in how easy something is. But there should definitely be a reward or some kind of bonus boss or time challenge or something so that you can have easy heroics, and then within that framework, something for people with better gear. And they're kind of doing that with the challenge modes, but it's still the exact same dungeon, just with less gear. There should be extra stuff inside of it to give you more incentive to do better.
So basically, kind of what you're saying is there is the current 5-man Zulaman heroic, and then there's the timed run for the bear mount. There needs to be extra incentive for it actually to be hard.
Pretty much. And the bear run is a joke, but yeah, that's pretty much it. But
Good point, sir. Anyways, on to our second topic. This one is by Shami Pawa at MMO Champ. And basically his topic is, what audience is MOP catered for exactly? And this topic has actually been something that I've kind of been mulling around in my head, and I really just can't come up with a definitive answer. And Shammy Power writes, it's been a good while since I've kept track of WoW, and this new expansion is concerning me greatly. Not to mention, it feels underwhelming. I have never felt underwhelmed by a WoW expansion before. It seems to be an expansion focused on making everybody feel like special snowflakes and removing any remaining drops of challenge, not to mention any genuine sense of accomplishment. It seems to be a game that is trying to focus on an under 12 market more than the original player base. And I'm just going to say that very last sentence I completely disagree with. I actually say this for the Pokemon battle system, if you will. The majority of the player base, or the age group of people who played that when they were kids, are probably around 18 to 25, maybe even some of them 30 if they were older nerds. The thing is I don't think they're trying to cater to under 12, because this game, still to my knowledge, has a PG look on it, and it does say curse words, oh no. I think what they're doing, if you want to look in terms of what player base they're trying to cater towards, I guess if this could technically be my answer, is they're just trying to get back whoever they had and keep who they currently have, because I'm not going to say any names, but there's a pretty competitive MMO on the market right now who started with 1 million subs and is now at 2 million subs. So I guess the question kind of shoots over to you, Darksend. What audience is MOP catered for exactly?
Me, actually. And like I said, I had 370s during Sunwell, and what I would do is I'd log on, do my dailies on my druid, do my dailies on my warrior, do my dailies on my warlock. Actually, I had a priest too, so I did it on my priest too. So I had 470s. I just didn't do any groups on my priest because I can't heal. There we go. Secrets out. I suck at healing. Anyway, so I had all 4 of those characters hit Exalted on the exact same day, because every day since Sunwell Island was released, I did every single daily on every single character. And then I'd go raid. And then come Cataclysm, I log in at 6:45 on Tuesday, log out at 12:15 Wednesday morning, repeat Wednesday to Thursday morning, repeat Thursday to Friday morning, repeat Monday to Tuesday morning. And that was it. That's the only time I logged on. Never did dailies, never farmed anything, never did anything like that. This expansion is trying to get people like me, who used to play all the time, and now just log in to do a raid, or do a 5-man, or do one looking for raid, or whatever it is that they log in that once a week for, or they log in at the exact same time every day for a couple days a week for. They want people to be playing more and have stuff to do outside of that thing they log in once a week for. And the pet battles, the campaigns, the challenge modes are great starts. And if they really pan out, they would get me to log in more than just log in my 5 hours a night to raid.
I think this is Blizzard actually taking a step back, possibly, if the whole, if all this gets implemented in MOP, and if all of this gets implemented into MOP correctly, I think Blizzard's kind of going back to that Wrath feel where you really don't run out of things to do. And just like you said, in this current Cata environment, it seemed they even made, I think, a big post about it at the beginning of the expansion while it was being developed, that a lot of people were complaining, I work all day, I don't have enough time to get all this done. And then Blizzard said, okay, let's make it so that you can really only do one thing a week. But they've lost so many subscriptions, and I think that is a huge part of it, is there's just nothing to do outside of raiding or waiting for a battleground queue to pop.
I know we said we wouldn't do this on the show, but there's a great blue post you guys have to read. It's on MMO Champ. It's called Are All MMOs Like This? And the last blue post is by Dex Sari, and he's replying to a quote from someone who wrote, "There is almost no reason whatsoever to venture out into the world." And his reply is, "That was an error made with the design of Cataclysm, but getting players invested in the world again is something we're interested in addressing with Mists." And thank you very much. I hate Ogremar. I have seen too much of it. In my 2 minutes before I go to the raid, and then when I hearth back to log out for 2 minutes after the raid ends, that is too much of it, because that's all I see outside of raid zones. And uh, we've said it so many times that we have to get back out into the world in this next expansion. On this very show, I can't count how many times we've said that. And Blizzard needs to realize it, and it looks like they finally have. And it's definitely catered to people like me who want to do stuff, who love raiding, and it's their sole focus with this game, but also want to do other stuff besides raiding. That way they don't feel like raiding becomes a chore. Because when you're doing hard mode progression 5 nights a week, raiding becomes a chore. And it feels like, oh, I'm going to log into WoW to wipe for 5 hours, and then another 5 hours, and then another 5 hours. And that becomes a chore. And you never have fun in WoW until you kill a boss. So while you're wiping in hard modes, being able to go to a place like Sunwell Island while you're wiping for 6 months on Muru, it's a great stress reliever within the constructs of the game. I mean, sure, you could, go play another game or watch TV or listen to music or hang out with real friends in real life, but you need a stress relief inside the game, and that's what all these new things they're adding back in are.
I definitely think that, I don't know if Pokemon would be a great stress reliever, because I remember being a little kid and nerd raging at the fact that Mewtwo would not go into a regular Pokeball in the first try. I remember just freaking out about that. But, but besides that, yeah, I think you actually bring up a good point that I've never really thought about in terms of, Wrath. Wrath had a great stress reliever, and it was called Trial of the Crusader and all those dailies around it. Although Trial of Crusader was a joke, have that as you
Those
beat.
dailies were so much fun. Oh my
I
God.
love those dailies.
I hated the instance, but I love doing the dailies. You're absolutely right.
Oh, the dailies were fun. Could joust here and there. Could, heck, even do a couple go kill 10 of this quest, which some people seem to be against, but I like. But I thought the funnest were, whenever you were actually in front of Icecrown Citadel jousting with all these NPCs. It was just fun. And you know what? You did it every day, but you didn't care. You didn't complain. It was just fun. You know what? I'm going to get on my rocker, and back in the good old days, we just did dailies for the hell of it. But that's the thing, dailies in Cataclysm, who does them?
I remember when I hit 80. The first thing I did, because not a lot of people were on yet, it was early in the morning. The first thing I did after I hit 80 was, well, after sleeping for 7 hours, because I hit 80 the second day that Kata was out, or that Wrath was out. But I slept for 7 hours, woke up, saw that no one was on, and flew around Hodir for 8 hours and probably collected 50 shards to hand in for rep. And you know what?
Awesome.
It was fun! Now, why was that fun, and why was doing that fun, but doing the Firelands dailies not fun? I don't understand that, but for some reason the Firelands dailies were not fun, but flying around, not even questing, was fun. That's what Blizzard needs to figure out. Why the things they tried to put in Cataclysm to be stress relievers didn't function as well as they had in the past. I think that's the biggest problem Blizzard is facing. And I honestly don't know why that was fun when Firelands dailies weren't, but that is, when Blizzard answers that, they're going to get back almost every single subscriber they've lost when they figure out the answer to that question.
But here's the problem. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. What made BC, Wrath of the Lich King, so much more nostalgic, reminiscent, just that overall good feeling that Kata just does not have? I can't put my finger. It's there, but I don't know. Can you think of any possible reason as to why that feeling would be there but not in Kata anymore?
Community, which is a whole nother can of worms.
Oh,
but
God. We don't got enough time for that.
looking for raid.
You were saying about the looking for raid?
Looking for raid and looking for group, and the removal of /1 looking for a tank this heroic, and flying to instances. You know what? One last point on this topic, and I'll make it quick. If when you found your looking for group queue for your 5-man, you still had to actually fly to the instance and zone in, instead of it automatically porting you there. a small change, like even something as minor as that, would go a long way, I bet.
Oh, definitely. And that's why I'm saying 100% that the no flying until level 90 in MOP,
Is the best thing they're doing this
that is
expansion.
so amazing. Kudos to Blizzard. I will buy them all a drink because that is just a beautiful idea. It really hits home with the core issue where they say, in Kata, you just don't get out in the world. You stand in Ogremar, you click a button, and you wait 12 minutes. That's all it is. That's all WoW is right now. But even like you said, even the minorest change of having to fly somewhere, I hope they do that with dungeons as well. You have to go there on foot or in the air. No more just no more just hitting a button and going. Our next topic is by Daisy on the official forums. And basically, we've talked about this in the past, and it's the shared lockout system. And we've talked about it in the past, I believe, whether it was a good or bad thing, yada, yada, yada. But I think they actually bring up some sort of a decent point with how the lockout should work in 10 and 25 man. Daisy says, I know Blizzard said that they were catering to the player base who felt forced to do both raid sizes. But I'm wondering, how many people would prefer them to separate these lockouts again for MOP? It seems that the combined lockout has caused nothing but drama, whereas 25 say that 10s really... Where 25s say that... Where 25 players say that 10-man players really aren't real raids, and that 10s are... I should have read this better. Where 25 players say that 10s really aren't real raids and that they're more easy and they really can't be taken seriously. Does anyone feel that this would be alleviated by making the lockout separate again? My personal answer to that is I didn't like it when they first implemented it, and I'm really not a big fan of it now because I'll be honest, I'm a hardcore. If they still had 40-man raids, I'd want to do that. I think the bigger the raid, the better it feels. And 10-mans, I'm going to say this, I felt as though, especially at the beginning of the expansion, maybe not so much now, that it was more or less just a thing that people went for because they didn't want to have to deal with a 25-man guild. They just wanted to be in their tight little niche, and they didn't really want to work outside of that. Now, I know that's not true for everyone. I know a lot of great people who are in 10-man guilds because it feels, you know the other 9 people. It's easier to make a raid. But at the same time, I think that it's harder to keep a 10-man going possibly because 1 or 2 people doesn't show up. Well, if that happens in a 25-man, you can still get some good progression. If you're losing 2 people from 10-man, you've got 8 people, and you really can't do a whole lot. What are your thoughts on this, Darksend?
Martin Spyglass, Unidentifiable Organ, Whispering Fanged Skull. That is the reason that 25-man raiders felt like they had to do 10-mans. The fact that best-in-slot trinkets were coming from 10-mans. So you got your best-in-slot 25-man trinket, and then your second trinket was your best-in-slot 10-man trinket from 10-man heroic. And that was the sole reason people felt they had to do the instances over and over and over again on both difficulties. The fact that both instances are dropping the same loot now, and the system that they put in with looking for raid, where if you queue a second time, you could still kill the boss, but you can't get loot from it. That mechanic alone tells me they have the ability to separate 10 and 25 and make players not get loot from the other one. And the other problem is if before this expansion you were in a 25-man guild as a friend and family member, and they said, hey, come in and help us kill this 2 or 3 bosses, and you could do that just fine and still go do your 10-man over the weekend when you weren't working till 3 in the morning and you actually had time. You can't do that anymore. So to let that person back in, and then say they killed Spine and Madness on 25-man, and then they do 10-man, they could still get loot from the first 6 bosses in 10-man. Blizzard, you've shown your game engine has the ability, because of the way Looking for Raid works, to have someone run Spine and Madness in 25-man normal mode, and then do a 10-man a few days later and be able to get loot off the first 6 bosses. Your engine is capable of supporting that feature. So if someone does do that, let's say, or not even that, let's say someone clears all 8 bosses in 25-man normal mode, what incentive would they have, knowing they wouldn't get loot from any boss, to go run a 10-man? 1, they're bored, and it gives them something to do. 2, they were only filling in because their guild has 2 raids, and 1 25-man raid and 1 10-man raid, and they were filling in, and now they can go run their 10-man also on the weekend. And 3, there was a number 3, apparently. But whatever. Exactly. Anyway, that's it. What else would there be? They're not doing it for loot. They're doing it for fun. So why are you against someone running the instance again for fun? It's not like it's giving you a leg up in any conceivable way.
I think more or less, I think you make a valid point with, people doing their main and then going back in, on a 10 or, if they did a 10, they go back in on a 25, not necessarily getting loot, because, they made a very strong stand that they don't want getting double loot or making double tiers, because they said that's why there was such crazy inflation in Wrath, which I'm just going to say now, there's crazy inflation now, and it's not because there were, 10-man versions of gear or a whole bunch of other raids that build up to it. There's going to be inflation no matter what you do, unless you completely break every single class's ability to scale. There's always going to be crazy inflation, especially with, I'm going to say it, mages. Fire mages have always been strong, especially with, buffs, nerf, right, that they kind of have to go through. But them, warriors, and in Wrath of the Lich King, it was Death Knights, but that's not allowed anymore. They just, once they got to this certain amount, armor pin was a huge one too. Whenever, melee classes got enough armor pin where they were going past all armor, and they had enough armor pin through just gear, and then get the rest in strength, it was like double dipping damage. Whereas, as a fire mage in Wrath, where you had a ton of haste and crit, it was just doing so much with so many different haste scaling abilities, and the ignite was a huge one. That's going to happen regardless. Unless you completely take stats out of the game, that's going to happen every expansion. So that's just saying, even if you were to put in 10-man gear versus 25-man gear, you don't even have to. You just put in the ability to replay it. Just no gear. Hell, I'll even say you do 25-man, normal or hard mode, you get the gear, but you can still go back in, just not get any gear. What's the harm in that?
Like I said, the problem was the different gear between 10 and 25-man. Some things in 10-man were just too good not to do a 10-man in addition to your 25. I would never, if you remove the lockout right now, I would never do the 10-man. Even if I got loot, I might not even do it, because it's the exact same loot. People were not after more chances at loot. They were looking at, this is my best item I could possibly have in that slot, so I have to do it.
Mm-hmm. That was a major thing whenever I played my Death Knight in Wrath. I love playing with Death Knight in Wrath. Haven't touched it since T11 though, but I think everybody knows why that is. I loved that class just because of the way it played and the feel in Wrath, but the problem with the trinkets in that class were you needed Deathbringer's Will off Sarfang and then Whispering Fang Skull, because it was very hard for a lot of players to get, what was that trinket, off of the Valk twins in TOC. Anyways, even if you couldn't get that, you still needed to run the 10-man to get something good. And that was the way with Martin Spyglass and all the ones you had listed off. Not implementing different gear, okay, fine. Why not? I've already explained all that, but I'm going to repeat that. So, do you have any ending thoughts on that, Darksend?
Just, Blizzard, answer this question for me, and you'll know the right thing to do. I did it every single boss on hard mode in Dragon Soul. Why would I want to go back and do it in 10-man, assuming they didn't share a lockout? Answer that question for me, and you'll know the right thing to do.
Well, anyways, that's all for us this week. Some major things to point out. We are still looking for a new guest host. We don't want to just two-man it all the time. We do have a guest host coming on next week. His name is Kim. I think you guys will like him very much. We are still wanting more people that are interested in actually guesting for us. You know, we've had some heavy hitters in the past with KZ. I know that I have actually spoke to Spiritus here recently, and he would once in a while maybe come on and, you know, do a episode with us. But we are looking for a new guest host, so just contact us on Facebook. That's the best way to get a hold of us right now. We have most of the info from Spiritus on, you know, Blip and everything, but it's a pretty slow moving train at this point, just getting everything, you know, going and getting back on our feet. So, Darkson, do you have any final things to say?
I am so glad to be back.
Yeah, as am I. We've wanted to come back for quite a while, but with the holidays and getting the right software set up, and I will say that this first episode back may not be our cleanest, but we're definitely working on it. I'm getting some new software here and soon. I've got Vegas Pro. I'm going to be working on getting a better voice recording. And I know that we had talked originally when Spirits was still with us about possibly eventually getting into visual podcasting. And that's still not off the table, but we're just going to get up on our feet right now. So hang in there with us. And as always, we appreciate everything, you know, you guys have done for us on Facebook, talked with us, given us great info about, you know, topics to talk about. So we're doing this for you guys. We're not just doing this for us. So we thank you once again, and we'll see you
And don't
next.
forget to listen to Letterman for our intro song, because he stole it from us. Yes, he stole it from us.
Tell that story real quick. Tell that story real quick.
I was watching Letterman the other day after the news was over, and I had it on in the background. I was playing whatever, maybe WoW, maybe Star Wars, I don't know. I was playing something on the computer.
Ooh, you can't tell the difference, Bert. Oh.
And all of a sudden, I turn over to the TV, and he played it at the beginning of the segment and at the end of the segment. So I heard it at the beginning of the segment, and I said, did I really just hear that right? So I took my headphones off, turned over to my TV, the segment ended, and there it was. Letterman stole our intro song. Thank you very much, Letterman. You will be hearing from our lawyers.
We have lawyers? Nobody told me about this. Well, anyways.
See you next week, guys.
Yeah, take care for 'em, junkies.